Colin Brother here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And here we are, albums of the year 20, top 20 albums of the year, 20 to 1, 20 each. So it's a bit of a longer video, but we'll try and get you through it as we offer you up our 20 albums, 20 from me, 20 from Brendan, that we think are the best releases in album format this year. You can go check out top 10 EPs, top 10 tracks, and top 10 live shows to get different lists. This is focused on albums. And while I don't expect lots of doubling up, I do expect us to have knowledge of each other's kind of what's going to be here, what's going to be there, and so on.
Yep. Yep, I would agree with that. I think there might be a few in there that are repeated, but...
Do you want to get started then? You might as well.
Go for it. All right. So number 20 is probably the oddest one in here because so it is Mr. Misery Severance. Okay. And the reason this is odd in here is because until I don't remember exactly when, a couple of weeks ago, in the time of recording, or maybe less than that, I don't really listen to anything much from Mr. Misery. I knew who they were, but I hadn't really listened to anything. I certainly hadn't listened to the new album. And we did a reaction to, I think the song was The Long Road. And I really, really enjoyed it. So from that point on, I've then been listening to this album a lot. And so much so that it kind of I had to get it into here, but I also at the same time, I hadn't felt like I'd listened to it enough that it was quite ready to kind of usurp the albums above it. However, if I'd had another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I have a feeling this probably would have been much further down the list.
Right.
Which is why it's kind of weird that it's in here. It's almost like a new entry into it, whereas like if I wrote this like 2 weeks ago, I probably had a different album at position 20 and this might have been further down. And then we did the reaction and I kept listening to it and it's moved up and up and up and up and up, and who knows where it could have ended. But you know, it's an amazing album, man. It's absolutely brilliant. And the kind of nice thing about listening to it so late in the year is that I kind of feel like it'll probably be dominating most of my early 2023 listening, which is kind of cool.
And it's perfect winter fodder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, my number 20 is Matriarch by the band Tusker, released via Churchward Records on the 25th of February 2022. This is a 7-track sludge behemoth, just something I found absolutely delightful to listen to, an album of frosty and fire, but with depth and meaning too. Tusker are a band that you kind of really should be getting on board with now. My first experience of them was live, and it was late last year when I saw them support Boss Keloid at the Boston Music Rooms, and I couldn't believe 2 people could make so much noise. The drummer pounding the drummers, but then doing vocals as well. That shit always impresses me when a drummer is a vocalist as well. Matriarch was a big hit for this band. I'm telling you, in a couple of years' time, another release, more word of mouth, more spread. You're going to start hearing a lot more about this band. So yeah, number 20, Matriarch by Tusker.
Cool. My number 19 then, the Halo Effects, Days of the Lost. Came out 12th of August via Nuclear Blast. I think I've said in other videos, sometimes feel like this band were created specifically for me. I'm pretty sure they weren't, but it's like, let's create a new band. Let's make them a Melodeath band, and then we'll make it a super group and put Mikkel Stan at the front so they sound a bit more like Dark Tranquility. And that's the Halo effect. Super groups as well, you come with high expectations too, but I think they comfortably lived up to that with this album. Strong Melodeath album, it's not like mind-blowing, genre boundary breaking sort of brand new stuff that you've never heard before here from other bands, but that's also okay sometimes. It's just a really, really strong release, full of wicked riffs, glorious melodies, and powerful vocals, and it has a song Shadow Minds on it too, which also helps having a couple of tracks that stand out as like amazing on an album. So
good shout. Yeah, we talked a bit in depth in the track one about the Halo effect, but I will throw in, but I will just add that it's just good. It's just very good Melodeath, and like that's perfectly fucking fine. Number 19. Oh man, you know how excited I get sometimes when we've been doing this a while. So now we get this thing where like, oh shit, this is a band that we've covered 2 or 3 times in depth in the past. So when a new email comes in and I see that band's name, I'm like, oh brilliant, this is awesome. Anyway, August-ish time. Got the album And Now the Owls from the album Epitaph from And Now the Owls Are Smiling. We've done a lot of stuff for this band, and I got very excited about it. Clubber Records, September 2nd, 2022 was when it was released. And then I read the press release and discovered that it was the final album from And Now the Owls Are Smiling. They were wrapping it up, saying that it reached its natural conclusion and that it was time to say goodbye. And that was so fucking bittersweet for me, because it's like I've got fresh And Now the Owls Are Smiling music, but I also have it to be the last. Now, the thing what makes that really important is this is a band that emphasizes emotion and atmosphere and beauty in their music anyway. The beautifully blackened atmospheric black metal that they do. So knowing then I'm like, listen to the last new music that I will get from this band, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. I'm going to fucking cry. It's so not fair, you know? But truth be told, it isn't tears of sadness. It's tears of celebration. And it's simply this: we have this record, we have this goodbye. They didn't go quietly into the night and go, you know what, the last record did really well. We can't top it. Let's just call it quits down. And they went, no, we're going to do one more momentously miserable, deviously dark, beautifully blackened, and astoundingly atmospheric as always. It is the perfect goodbye for this band. They're going to be missed, man, but what a way to bow out. It's my number 19th favorite album of the year.
So 18 then. So my 18th favorite album of the year is the album Warfront by Windrose. So Napalm Records, dwarven power metal.
Yeah.
Been around a while now, these guys, you know, and I feel like they're improving with each release. Which probably sounds a bit like disrespectful, but you know.
No, I think that's fair.
Is,
you're getting better at what you bloody do. That's the point, isn't it?
You know, look, it's power metal. It's what it's meant to be. It is like a collection of battle anthems. You know, came out on the 10th of June, and it's a fun but punchy album. It's got loads of great riffs and melodies and transitions and vocals and everything like that you kind of want from power metal. Great drums, composition and the structure of the songs is impressive. It's, you know, for I did originally write down like, oh, this kind of makes them leaders in this genre of metal, but then I was like, I'm not sure how many other people are in the dwarven power metal genre specifically, so I guess they are leaders. I felt overall like the album, I love the previous album, Winter Saga. I thought it was phenomenal, but it was like a few songs in it that made it phenomenal, whereas I feel like this is a much more rounded album, you know, all the way across the board. And that's why I think it's stronger, just full of catchy, memorable music. Yeah, Windrose's Warfront.
Good shout. Right, 18 for me. And if we were doing a list of the most weirdest thing or the most potentially polarizing albums of the year, this would be number one. This is Corpus Vice by the artist Eden Reyes, and that's Reyes with a Z at the end, self-released on May 16th, 2022. I am not going to even attempt to describe how this sounds. I would simply just say, go fucking listen to it. In a world where you've heard it all before, when you've heard all the genre stuff and descriptions where someone says, we genre defy, and then just end up playing metalcore mixed with hardcore. And it's like, yeah, easy there, guys, go wild. Eden Reyes is legitimately doing something I had never heard before. It is unbelievably special. It is unconventional. It is fucking difficult to listen to. It is guaranteed to polarize. We are talking beyond what we are talking about Marmite, maybe with a little bit of poo mixed into it, you know, so you can't taste the poo. You're going to taste the Marmite, but you know it's there. But would you still eat the Marmite if you love it? Probably, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. It is an experience that stays with you. It's one of those that I say, listen to it. Check it out. You might love it or you might hate it. I fell in the love camp because I simply put, and it's not cliche to say this about this album, I had never heard anything like this. So yeah, check it out. It's fucking weird.
It sounds weird. It's been described weird.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. I don't know where I was going with that one, but yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's left a mark on me because I like for the last part of your talk there, I was still trying to work out whether I would eat it.
Yes, that's the question. How much do you
I
love
like
Marmite?
But would I? So I'll stay in with relatively big bands. Quite a polarizing album to some people, but my 17th is Parkway Drive's Darker Still.
Cool album.
I guess I was thinking about this when I put this in here, and I think it's only a few years back when Reverence came out, and that was, I think, my favorite album of that year. It was either one or two, but it was definitely,
Higher
up
up,
there.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of feel like, I guess, by this being in 17th, that automatically makes it a worse album. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just that there is an element to Darker Still that is kind of like a Reverence too. Okay. But I think that's a good thing, because I think like Parkway Drive, for them at the moment, that's the bubble that they're in. That's the formula that they're playing with. And I think that works. But I guess it just means that, like, it's not the first time I heard this Parkway Drive doing this style. So that's probably why it's further down the list. Like I said, it's not a bad thing that it sounds a bit like Reverence too. I think there is a little bit in some of the songs, a bit more darkness, a bit more frustration and anger, but it's not a specific, particularly like angry album or a dark album. I did then right. It's just a bit darker still. There you go.
It is a bit darker,
I'd from
yes.
It is a bit darker, yeah. Look, and for me, I was like, I didn't particularly need them to change up what I feel like is a winning formula, and I think it would have been madness for them to do so, to be kind of riding the wave of Reverence and their more theatrical performances, and then go, hey, we're going to release a really raw metalcore or a deathcore album or something like that. Like it would have been a mistake at this stage. That may have to come in the next album, something
It
different.
may, yeah.
But here they set a bar for themselves with Reverence, and Darker Still, I think they get back to that same bar with an album full of quality songs and loads of new bangers that will fit nicely into those festival headliner or sub-headliner slots and arena tours that they're doing. It's filled that section of the catalog out, and it has got some really, really strong songs in it. Like, favorite of mine being Soul Bleach, which is fucking heavy, like really, really aggressive, more aggressive than anything on Reverence. So yeah, 17th.
It's in there regardless. That's the thing. Top 17th best album of the year. When we're talking about almost nearly 600 albums reviewed again this year, that's still incredible. It can get that high. My 17th album of the year then comes from a 100-year-old man, and it's the album Sleep in Light, released June 17th, 2022 by Consoling Sounds. Now, I didn't really know a lot of details going into this until we got the PR over it. But I remember being like, oh, shit, I haven't heard about this band in years. They were like, oh, we interviewed them on one of our earliest Bloodstocks back when we were a bit shitter at interviews. Which was kind of cool to see it. Then I did some reading, and I understood completely why they had not disappeared off the face of the planet, but basically had gone away. And that's simply because they suffered an immensely important loss within the band. Not just a friend, not just a bandmate, sorry, but a friend, a brother. And this album exists because of that, basically. It's a story behind this album's creation as to his influence, and even his last recordings are utilized in this record, and it makes for an incredibly emotional experiencing, but it's also heavy. Those heady themes add some heaviness and weight to what is the proportion of this. Themes of isolation and despair, encroaching darkness, and uncompromising weight. There's a bleakness running through it like a vein. That should be obvious. But it's the band's trademark is also how beautiful and bright and hopeful it can also be at the same time. You can headbang to this, and you can smile, and you can grimace, you can raise a fist, you can stomp your feet, you can do all of that. But most of all, I think the most important thing about this album is you will feel something. And I don't even know if you need to know the band or like the lost friend or the story behind it to get the sentiment. I think it comes through. And if you didn't know, you'd be like, there's something going on here, and I need to understand what. And I think that's what comes through. So yeah, that's my 17th favorite album of the year.
Right, 16th. This one you might disagree with in terms of positioning, but we'll try to explain. And this is Conjurer's Pathos. Thought you might do that.
Vomit.
I mean, I don't. I can fix it almost instantly. Like, I mean, firstly, like it's top 20, like you said, out of a fucking shitload of albums. All these albums are close to each other. I am a fan of Conjurer. I think they're great. I agree with most of what you say about them. One of the most exciting young bands we've got in this country. Probably out of all the bands that I can think around in those circles, the one that I think is the most likely to break through that sort of ceiling and hit other levels. I agree with all of that, and I also agree that this album is really, really strong. I haven't quite made my mind up on whether I think this is better than Maya or not. I think it's on the level. Like, do you know
Mm.
what I mean? But like, I haven't quite made my mind up. The simple reality of it is the reason why it's only 16th is while I have listened to it and I have enjoyed it, I haven't spent an awful lot of time going back to it to
Hmm.
re-listen and get like a greater love for it. And it's nothing to do with the album, why I haven't done that. It's just moving on to other things. And that's
Of
why
course.
I did, I still feel I will, and I will go back and I'll listen to it more and I'll fall more in love with it as time goes by. But as it is right now, uh, I haven't dedicated as much time to Pathos as I want to. So
You
yeah,
don't
look,
have
I
to
think it's a
defend.
great. No, but I think it's a great album. I really do. I just feel like it's one of those things, isn't it, man? Like it's like I've listened to it, I can hear songs in my head now. I think it's good. I think it does show evolution, does show growth in the right direction. It's very difficult. I found it difficult at first because I found myself comparing it to Maya the first couple of times I listened to it and almost doing that comparison thing because I guess that's because Maya was such a impactful release. Like, do you know what I mean? That I guess maybe that was a natural thing to do to be comparing it backwards.
Of course.
But then, yeah, like it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's like it's happened sometimes. And it's just like next album come out, and I was on to that, and then on to the next one, to the next one. Always with I need to get back to Pathos at some point.
Yeah, we've talked about this before and other lengths. I've always been meaning to. We'll have to do it's not for now, of course, but I want to do a video way down the line at some point next year in 2023, where we kind of just discuss the our experience and how we actually review so many things and how we do it and what the process is. Basically, probably really boring because it'd be analytical, but I feel like it'd be good to share that. But anyway, number 16 then. Well, I should add, yes, unsurprisingly, Conjure will appear on my list, but a little bit higher, a little bit higher. 16, Saw with album Origins via Season of Mist, June 24th, 2022. Listen, there are a few bands I cite in the world. If you were going to be listening, what are some of the bands that you would go to that you're guaranteed to not just get heavy metal, black and heaviness, but also invoke a hell of a lot of strong emotions? Saw are one of the bands I almost always go to. Been around about a decade now, and this is their 5th album. The band simply deliver incredible music that is testament to Andy Marshall. Andy Marshall. In the track videos, I couldn't remember his last name. Thankfully, I actually wrote it down here. So there you go. Origins. This is an album that I think more than any other nails that Caledonian feel that Saw really want to sell. It's so expansive. I think it's the finest album they've released to date. Track after track of wondrous and lightning metal music. They are pushing onwards and upwards while staying true to their core Caledonian sound. Origins is a masterpiece of emotion and metal. Number 16.
Wow. 15 then.
Mm.
And my 15th is a name that comes up a fair few times from me, and it is Machine Head with the album of Kingdom and Crown. Again, I guess in a year when Machine Head released an album, I don't know, in the past it might have featured higher up the list. Of Kingdom and Crown, like when I saw Machine Head live, was an album I guess I went into with some trepidation, in how it was going to be after a couple of not as strong as I would have liked releases, which is still, still have good songs on them, but not as strong as I would have liked. And then a lot of turmoil and a lot of bad press and band members and all sorts of fucking things happening.
Yeah, stuff
And
you
then
just
a
don't want
new
to hear.
album comes out. Yeah. It's their 10th album. They're obviously very experienced, coming out on the 26th of August. They also played Bloodstock, although we didn't see them as a secret band.
Yep.
And like I said, yeah, like it was weird, but of Kingdom and Crown, when like I got to listen to it and it settled, it was like another evolution for a band that had become, I guess, as much known for their changes as their quality sometimes. But what it does very well is it takes all of the positive Machine Head familiarities that I have and others will have and combines them well into an album. It's got earlier thrash sounds, chunky groove, strong vocals, drums, but keeps their more modern production sound, brings back the dual guitar solos, the cleaner passages, bigger choruses. It's a concept album that meant like so little to me in
Yeah.
being like something to do with Attack on Titan. I still don't really know an awful lot about what that is.
I believe it's a very popular anime show, but
Yeah.
that's about where my knowledge ends too.
But what I kind of liked about it, right? So a couple of, well, I say a couple, I think maybe like 3, maybe even 4 of the songs on this album were released as singles. over quite a lengthy period of time before this album came out. So when these songs came out, like Rotten and Arrows in Words from the Sky and all that, like there was no awareness that these were part of an incoming album. They were just like
Indeed.
almost like standalone singles, or some of which I liked very, very much, and some of which I thought were okay. Then when the album dropped, even though I don't understand the concept, what it did is it made sense of those songs, because within the story of it, although I know nothing about Attack on Titan, but you could understand the story of this guy wandering, lost, like the weight of the world on his shoulders, sort of thing. And that was all familiar concept stuff outside of whatever Attack on Titan was. And all of a sudden, the songs made sense, and songs that I'd felt were okay suddenly felt much stronger within the story. It made a lot more sense. I also kind of felt like maybe the concept was a really good idea for them, because it might have helped them to have to narrow in their writing. They had to now almost put walls up and stay within a structure.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like whether that was a good thing to almost like focus the creative side of things and say, well, actually, like we can't do this and we can't do that and we can't go that expansive because we're trying to follow a story here. And maybe that helped to focus the mind a little bit, because I guess that's what I got really out of Kingdom and Crown more so than anything else, was just that it felt like, unlike some previous albums, like each song had a purpose. They were well written. It was a strong across the board album with one or two songs in particular that stand out as the big, wonderful tracks, Unhallowed being one and Arrows and Word from Sky also being one. But it just felt strong, and it felt like it had a purpose. Like it didn't feel like a collection of 16 random tracks that had been written over the past year or something like that. It felt like, this is a dedicated album. It makes sense. It's got a story. It's got a structure, and I can follow it. And then, being a long-term fan, an awful lot of relief, I guess, to a degree, coming out of it, thinking like, oh, thank God, seeing the band release something that I feel is strong, plenty of creativity, enthusiasm, and fire still left in the belly. And also seeing it get some positive press, because they did get some positive press, and that was quite nice to see after like hearing everyone bitch and moan about Rob for the last 18 months. It was nice to see people go, oh, yeah, that album's all right.
Yeah, that album's all right. Okay, 15. Rick Massey, Guided to an Imperfect Light, self-released on June 3rd, 2022. I think this guy's an uber talented solo artist, one that I don't think you can pigeonhole easily. The music's, it can be summed up as progressive metal, but it's one of those where that's too simple a classification, and you kind of just need to experience to understand that what he does doesn't fit into genre-shaped holes that neatly, but it also makes every release quite exciting. This is the second album, and to be honest, I was a bit worried because, hey, you did a cool first album, was really interested in that, but what does that mean? This proved that he was not a one-trick pony, and that first stellar release was not an accident. He does have this talent, but he upped his game here, delivering an album that, to me, didn't put a single foot wrong. I think he's an incredible solo artist. I think this album proves that it's so fucking varied and interesting from beginning to end. So yeah, that's my 15th.
Cool. 14th then. Okay. The first of a few, not in a row, but the first of a few that become harder to pronounce.
Okay.
So, this is a band called, I'm going to just call them Moynock. It's like MO apostrophe YNOQ.
I've seen the name.
The album is called A Place for Ash. Self-released, came out on the 9th of September. They are a black metal band, American. Didn't really know, I don't think I knew anything about them, to be honest with you. It's not a debut. I think it's their second album, full length, and I think there's an EP or two around as well. So, not brand new, but brand new to me. Like I feel like I always say these days about black metal bands, it's respectful towards traditional without being quite traditional. It's very intense, it's very heavy, but it's still quite atmospheric at times. It has like just a few little creative touches here and there that just make it stand just slightly outside of traditional. It's not so far out that I think even people that love the traditional would have a problem with it. I think most people would be able to find like this fits nicely. It's got a lot of, the band's really, really strong, the album's really strong. They've got loads of like weapons within them. The vocals are very, very powerful. Lots of kind of murderous imagery and stuff that comes along with, the album, and whether it's the cover, but also the stuff that you kind of get in your mind from listening to it. Very, very heavy, very riffy, very powerful drums, occasional touches of melody, which is where the more atmospheric sort of stuff comes from. And I felt like, even though like it was quite heavy and visceral to listen to, that it also still felt like quite intricate. Like, do you know what I mean? It wasn't just noise for the sake of noise. It wasn't massively raw. It's reasonably well produced. It has quite a rich sound. So yeah, like a band I didn't know much about before, but really, really enjoyed this album. Still enjoy it a lot now. So my 14th.
My 14th is Doomsday Psalm by the band Dystopia AD. Quite a recent release at the time of recording. It's December 2nd, 2022. Self-released as well. I think this band's fucking great. 2 out of 3 of their albums we've reviewed and given 10 out of 10. And this is the latest as well. Multifaceted, multi-textured, progressive death metal, where they have the ability to tenderize flesh and crush bones, but are also capable of enriching the soul with progressive layers and melodic tone shifts. It's basically heavy, brutal poignancy, if that makes any sense at all. And like, it had been 2 years since the release of their last record, 2020, that one was released. And this was such a great stride forward as well. And I thought the album was fucking spectacular. We don't go higher than 10, so I can't really, rank this higher than the other. But this builds in the dark and heavy instrumentation with even more progressive soundscapes, all while drip feeding in dark but melodic atmosphere. I really, really couldn't believe how good this album was. As of the time of recording, I spoke to these guys, 2-piece, yesterday, and that interview goes up this week. But for you guys who are watching this video, it went up last week, so go check that out, because it's about 50 minutes long and it is as fascinating as their music is. So yeah, Doomsday Psalm is my 14th album of the year.
Number 13 then. So my 13th is the album Electric Elite from the band Riot City, which was released on the 14th of October via No Remorse Records. So Canadian band, new wave of British heavy metal / traditional metal / thrash / all of those little bits and pieces. It's a second studio album, second one reviewed, similar to what you were saying. Actually, the first one we gave 9 out of 10, the second one got 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. They are certainly the sort of band you will listen to and have feel that traditional vibe coming from them, without them sort of sound like a replica of anyone, which is quite important.
Indeed.
You can hear the influences, and that's absolutely fine, but they're not trying to sound like they're an 80s band still playing today. They've got a modern take with a modern production, playing music similar to Priest, Maiden, that sort of thing. So I guess like a remastered album. They're high energy. There's a lot happening. It doesn't really, and again, I think that's kind of important for a band like this. It doesn't really kind of like give you too much time for breathe or anything like that. It's very, very fast. Lots of riffs, lots of rhythms, loads of lead guitars, and lots of solos. Like songs that have occasionally 2-3 solos in them. Solos are usually pretty significant as well. Vocals, even though I'm not usually a fan of very, very high pitched vocals, in here they just don't go over the line of where I would have a problem with them. They are occasionally very, very high, but it works well in the songs. And it's also not consistently high, because I think that would have been potentially a problem for me, but it's not. So it can hit a high and then it comes back down again, and that's okay. But overall, it's just like, it's a high octane, like 100-mile-an-hour album that just full of like mad guitar solos and wonderful riffs and drums, and it's fun to listen to as well. And not a single, as far as I was concerned anyway, drop of filler on it. It's just a strong album with song after song that you're like, yeah, this is really fucking cool. And you come out of it happy. It's a sort of album that you listen to, it fills you with energy and it makes you smile. You come out at the end of it with a big grin on your face.
My next one is less about smiling, at least in the same way. It's Messages from the Deep by Binary Order, self-released on November 29th, 2022. This is a sci-fi horror soundscape of industrial death with unexpected epic detail. It's a tense, anxiety-driven slab of inspired heavy music. It's a solo artist, again, stunning with their capabilities. God damn it, people, stop being so talented. It's annoying as fuck. And By New Order, proven to be an impressive act before, but this is such a step up. It's something else. There are reasons why I suspect maybe it resonated more with me, the inspiration of the time. It makes it feel so much bigger, so much darker, and so much more important. For me, it's always impressive when any artist manages to fully immerse a listener into their mindset. But By New Order manages this with such ease. I think that's one of the things I found to be so impressive. Track of grandiose industrial synth and melody paired with basically the girth and weight of metal. It's a really, really strong piece of work. My 13th favorite album of the year. Unlucky number 13.
Number 12 then. I'll go back to me big bands again now with Blind
Okay.
Guardians, The God Machine.
Okay, all right.
So 2nd of September, released by Nuclear Blast, the band's 12th studio album, but first in like 5, 6, 7 years or something like that, like as Blind Guardian proper.
Yeah, because they had a few different things in between, didn't they? Yeah, but
Yeah.
not an album. It was Beyond the Red Mirror, wasn't it? And it was like 2013 or something.
Yeah. I'm big fan of the band anyway. We all are. We'll go far, say it all. But yeah, I guess this album, like it's not that like it resonates with me more than older albums or anything like that. I think this might be wrong, but I think this is the first Blind Guardian album that came out while I was a fan of them. I believe everything else I listened to, I saw them live and then listened back.
That was on the Beyond the Red Mirror tour.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool, like in that aspect. It was like, oh, I'm actually excited for a Blind Guardian release rather than just listening to a back catalogue. You know what I mean? It was kind of cool. And I'm a big fan of it. I think it's a really, really strong album. It's got a lot of variety. It's quite fast and energetic, a bit like going back to sort of older days at times. It's quite heavy. It's got Secrets of the American Gods on it, which is like one of my favorite songs of theirs ever. It's also got like a lot of variety, like you would expect from them, sort of more folky ballad, some more heavy stuff. It's got all the elements I love about Blind Guardian. It's just another strong Blind Guardian album. Not much else to say about it.
It certainly is. I agree. But my 12th is something heavier, taking the ferocity of Swedish death metal, warping it with hardcore chaos, then throwing in some brand new elements. It's Cask of Freedom with the album Servants of Violence, self-released on May 20th, 2022. I already thought, you should already know this band are Bright Spark in the British extreme scene, but this album is such a triumph. Diverse, exciting blast of extreme music, where they also pay like tribute to their earlier days, less refined, a bit messy, a bit more focused on being a kind of Swedish death metal rerun if you want, but now they've really, really developed into their own sound. We've got those elements, but man, oh man, it's not that anymore. It's headbanging Circle Pit Gold from the very beginning to the very end. This is a killer album. Really, not surprise me because I always thought they were a good band, but didn't expect it to be as good as it is. So yeah, Cask of Freedom, my 12th.
Okay, number 11. Before we get to the serious shit. So my 11th is the self-titled album from Aboria. 4th of February release via Prosthetic Records. Described as a dystopian black metal trio. I like the dystopian part of that. It should be a black metal trio, but it's dystopian.
Yes.
Bit of a super group, I guess, of sorts, depending on like how famous you see the other bands as being. Like it's members of Ashen Horde, Catheter, and Vimana. Self-titled debut, so it's their debut album. For me, it's absolutely phenomenal. I love it. It's full of intensity, aggression. It is black metal. It has got other styles, links to it, other elements and genres in it, but it's always within that same sort of wheelhouse. So, like the idea of like, oh, here's some black and death metal, but we're going to do some elements of death metal in it. So it's kind of like, like there might be a bit of deathcore or a bit of like more traditional black, that sort of thing. So it stays within that area, but like plays around with those different elements a bit, which kind of works really, really well, to be honest with you, across it. It kind of gives it, I guess, the more unique standout moments. The very dark and cold and bleak and desperate album. It's not a happy, jolly album. It's not a Christmas album. well, it depends on your preferences, I suppose. But
Yeah.
they're extremely talented guys. They've got a lot to offer. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful debut, and yeah, just looking forward to seeing what happens now. It's kind of strange with these ones, don't you think? Like, because I mean, unless I'm wrong, but like bands like Ash and Horde are still around, so like,
Yeah,
I guess this
but
is like maybe a side project, or
I just think there's such a shortage of musicians in certain
yeah,
areas nowadays. Everybody's just playing in many different bands, try and make money somehow.
yeah.
And number 11 for me, the band is Somalia Yacht Club. The album is The Space, and it was out by Season of Mist on April 22nd, 2022. This is one where I know it's not for everybody, but it's kind of something so perfectly up my street, where it's a hard-hitting but infinitely dreamy sound, taking the listener on a progressive and hazy journey within this album, where atmosphere and cinematic soundscapes meld with post-rock, psychedelia, and stoner-infused energy. I found it quite a captivating release, enough so that I still regularly go, oh yeah, I'll put that on. I need kind of something just to chill out to, relax, and put it on in the background. Perfect for that. I love it. So it's my 11th.
Oh, top 10 time then.
Yay.
Here we go then. So 10th place for me is the album Why Gododin from the band The Wolves of Avalon. Released, yeah, the one got released via Godrea Records on the 25th of November. So not that long ago, really. Didn't know much about this band. I've been pretending if I said I did. When it came to me, band were formed in 2009, originally by one of the main men of the band, Metatron, but I think under the name The Meads of Asphodel, and also then songwriter James Marinos. This is their 4th album. It's to do with something called Gododin, which were northern warriors who battle against Anglo tribes, are documented in ancient Welsh poems by the bard Aneurin, which have been translated for this concept, I guess.
Yeah.
Wolves of Avalon are, I don't remember where they're from. I think they're Norwegian. I might be wrong. I might be Swedish or it's Scandinavian. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Who knows? I can't remember. But I know that they have a passion for British history, the good and the bad. So their songs are built around that. They're a heavy folk influenced band with a lot of different folk instruments and folk vocals and everything like that across it, combined with much heavier touching on the black metal side occasionally, or I guess just metal. I think it's really, really wonderful as an album. I think like at times beautiful, at times heavy and dark. I find the whole thing to be like really captivating, exciting, and quite an emotional ride. The use of like so many different instruments and different vocal styles and lots of guests, singers and musicians and everything like that across the whole thing just makes it really, really sound quite massive, exciting, and full of depth. And it just blends beautifully those two genres of like metal and folk. Very, very creative and very, very honest and intense album at times, but like sort of thing that I think like if you listen to this whole album end to end, like you're not going to forget it. It'll leave a mark. Whether that's a good one or a bad one, I suppose, is a different thing. But for me, it was obviously a good one.
Having any opinion is better than having no opinion at all.
Yeah.
Something completely different in my number 10. If someone had come to me and said to me in August of 2022, which is when this album was released, and said to me, hey, do you want to listen to and write a review for Norma Jean album? I'd been like, Norma fucking Jean is still about. Wow. I certainly wouldn't have been that interested. This is a band that's been active since 1997. And I've been very, very successful. Released Death Rattle, Sing For Me via Solid State Records on August 12th. I went into it not expecting too much. To be honest, I kind of expected them to coast on past successes at this stage of their career. I know it sounds a long time. You've made your name. I knew who you are, and I don't really listen to them at all. And then they put this out, and I was fucking shocked. This album is incredible, unbelievably brilliant. Arguably the most abrasive sounding record, where I'm genuinely stunned and shocked. I was like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to put this much effort in. You don't have to go this hard. You don't have to be this noisy. Chill out, guys. You've been around a long time. Have a rest. They don't listen to me. This is an incredible release. It reinvigorated a forgotten interest and love I had in this band. So yeah, number 10, Norma Jean's Death Rattle for me. Sing for me. Death Rattle, sing for me.
Well, there you go. I've also heard the name, but never listened to them. So
yeah,
there you go. So my ninth then is quite a recent album. It's by a band called Krill Owen, and the album's called Emperor Rising, which came out via Scarlet Records on the 9th of December. And I'm back in Scandinavia again with a Swedish power metal band. This is their debut, or their full-length debut. I think they've had EPs beforehand. It is very much a power metal album, but in the fast and sort of fiery vein. This is not really, it has moments, but it doesn't really kind of go too much on the, big kind of storytelling or folky stuff or anything like that. It's more of the sort of faster power metal stuff that just kind of comes and like doesn't really let up an awful lot. It's got a lot of pace, a lot of power. It's got basically just a collection of huge fucking melodic anthems, man. It's just like one after the other, an album of absolute bangers, like fist pumping stuff. The drums throughout are phenomenal, guitars shine, the vocals are great, well produced, well laid out, like, just a really, really good album of power metal songs,
Yeah, I love that. I love that when that happens, when, it's over a band you never really heard of. You do this a lot, you write reviews a lot. So it's not that you go on with low expectations or anything like that, but an unexpected album, you have no idea what to expect. So if you can come out with it and end up being your 9th best album of the year, that's phenomenal. And that applies to this one, my 9th. This is In a Bizarre Dream by the band Black Lab, released August 19th, 2022 by New Heavy Sounds. And I had no clue about this band, read the description and thought, okay, this is going to be interesting at least. And holy fuck was it. It is one of those where I find describing it is very, very difficult. It is a duo. There's, again, just 2 people. And it's like a fuzzed out, heavy doom band. But that underplays it because this is heavy, dark, intense music that sets your teeth on edge. Blend of vocal styles, chunky and chuggy riffs, heavy-ass drumming. It is such an incredible step up. And nowhere is that exemplified than when they move, because it's not doom as doom either. It's Titanic levels of doom, but also then going to faster, rougher, wilder sounding metal moments that are abrasive and sharp to the ears. It gives it such a fucking edge. It is, to me, a work of genius that, dare I say, turns the doom genre on its head a little bit. So that's my 9th favorite album of the year.
So my 8th favorite album of the year is London-based symphonic metal newcomers Mistborn, with the album The Cradle of Time, which was self-released, came out on the 18th of November, and it blew me away. Really, it's just an absolutely gorgeous concept album. I think it's just a masterclass, really, of storytelling and emotion-driven music, lots of symphonic elements. It's quite heavy on it. Very, very clear and concise story, which I found to be really beneficial with it. To be honest, it wasn't loose. It was a really clear. I understood exactly what's happening throughout each song, understood the journey, and was able to connect with it. Strong lyrical content as well to also perfectly deliver the message that they were trying to put across. If you're going to do a concept album, like a tight one as well that is trying to tell a story, that's quite important to be able to actually get that message across. And I think they perfected that here, which for a debut, you maybe want to not perfect too much, because you got to follow this up one day.
Yeah,
might have been better to do a few missteps here, guys. But the pacing of the album is really strong. There's no moments of boredom. It leans very heavily on the symphonic side, like I said, but the orchestrations throughout are really, really wonderful. The guitars are fantastic too. They become a bit more of a driving force, I felt, later in the album, but again, everything seems perfectly suited to each track. Very, very strong drums and the beautiful vocals. The guy's a really, really gorgeous singer. So yeah, I just think the whole album just has a shitload of style and substance to it, and for a debut release, it is really, really stunning.
Last couple of weeks, Mistborn have got a lot of shouts on this channel.
Yep.
All right, my 8th favorite album of the year is Judicators, The Majesty of Decay, November 25th, 2022 by Prosthetic Records. This is a band that's basically unmatched in the power metal category, as it were. You know, I say that in a way because I can't describe Judicator as power metal in the same way I can say Blind Guardian's power metal and so on. There's quite very different bands, but Judicator are still a power metal. This is an illuminating experience. It's energized and heartfelt. It's a band that continually moves forward. It's uniquely their sound. The fact this is around a sort of mysterious concept album where themes surround things like love and family and how they transform that into something that you can also relate to and try and break apart from the band's perspective is really, really cool, but keeps you kind of guessing. But ultimately, it's a thrill ride from beginning to end, completely unique experience, as Judicator has proven to be almost every album they've released. But the fact they continue to do this, you know, still is so impressive. And the Majesty of Decay is them at their most unique. So yeah, it's my favorite album of the year.
Right, we go for another pronunciation one for me then at position 7. So this is the album We Moed Sklanken by the band Mezlam Taya. They are a Dutch unorthodox black metal project.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, sometimes you hear really shit like that and you're like, okay, it could be exciting. The album came out on the 25th of February via Babylon Doom Cult Records.
Mm.
You know, obviously I knew nothing about Mezlam Taya going into this album. You know, you have to be mental to even bother pretending that I'd heard anything about these guys whatsoever. But to be honest, it's quite a remarkable album. It is raw on the black metal elements, but the unorthodox side comes really from the other elements and what they bring into it. Very, very heavy use of saxophones and other brass instruments. So, you know, you expect like a jazz bass kind of sax solo to then transition into very raw traditional black metal sounding, even in terms of production, before a little stop for, you know, maybe a bit of piano and another sort of brass instrument section. It is different, like, you know, like it's not a natural, like it I think the first time I listened to it I was intrigued and like kind of what the fuck, sort of more so than like, oh, I'm loving this. But then it synchronized, like as I listened, you know, more and more across as I went through the album, it kind of started feeling like it was making sense, you know, somehow. You know, even the pictures like that come with the album, man, like the PR pack that come with it, like there's like, oh, there's a picture of 2 musicians here. There's a, you know, the dude in the suit and a hat playing like the sax, and there's a picture of the other guy, which I assume is the other part of the project, who's wearing like a nice white shirt with shades on. Like, and I was just like, oh, okay, what's happening here? But you know, it is as odd as it maybe sounds, but in a brilliant way. It's quite exhilarating to listen to. It's black metal, occasionally jumps in the gaze camp. It's very, very respectful to traditional black metal for the most part, other than when it decides to suddenly go like massively avant-garde and, you know, with loads of progressive and technical elements thrown in, and then back to suddenly like you just listen to a traditional black metal band like up on a mountain in Norway somewhere. It's odd but brilliant, and I really, really enjoy it as an album.
Cool. Okay, my number 7. Sometimes we talk about bands that just when you see they got a new release, you're like, okay, cool, got total confidence in this band here. And one of mine is a band called Werewolves, and this is the album From the Cave to the Grave, released on June 24th by Prosthetic Records. A band that to me embody aggression, and once again did not let me down when it came to something that just froths at the mouth. It's 9 examples of what happens when a band just stops trying to be nice. Although the argument is that if you listen to Wells' previous music, previous albums, they're not exactly, you know, they haven't gone from, oh, here's a song about flowers and kittens and shit, and now we're going to sing about the end of the world in the angriest way possible. They are a revelation in the extreme metal camp. I'm generally shocked that this band isn't getting higher or more dues than they do. Agonizing speed, black and death savagery, but with songwriting creativity that just cuts through everything. It makes it so much more than just noise. It's a headbanger. But one of the things that makes this standout than anything they've ever done before is I thought this album had a clear refinement, of exactly what they would do, and that they'd become so adept at it that they knew exactly what they needed to do and how to do it. And it's tight and it's to the point. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's just a kick-ass album. Yeah, my number 7.
Number 6, and I think my final attempt at poor pronunciation. Okay, so the band are easy. They're Unroof, UNRU, and the album is Die Wiederkehr des Verdrängten.
German then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also via Babylon Doom Cult Records.
Wow, two albums from them.
Yeah, in a row as well.
Yeah.
And the album came out on the 4th of March. Atmospheric black metal band. And the album, like you said, they are German, but this album is immense. Just a grandiose, expansive statement of intent, full of deep black and gloom and fury, yet still balanced in dissonance and harmony. Creates massive soundscapes that you will feel as much as you will hear. It's 5 tracks, but nearly an hour long. You know, so this is big, expansive music. Plenty of patience, I guess, within songs, and because they've given themselves so much time, I guess, for these songs, you know, it's allowed them to add at different elements in, and take their time with things. You know, there's even a song on it that has kind of sad, almost desperate, like not far off crying female vocals, like running as a thread throughout the background of it. You know, so there's a lot of like ideas and like creative sort of juices on this. I think, yeah, it's a really, really phenomenal album for me. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorites in the year, obviously, which is why it is where it is. It delivers an awful lot. Like, it's quite emotional. The band, I think I knew who the band were, but I wouldn't have been able to like sort of list songs off that I knew of them or anything like that beforehand. But
yeah,
certainly left me feeling like hugely respectful and full of admiration for what I believed to be, I think it's the highest, is it? Possibly one of the highest black metal albums in my list.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about them really.
Great.
Right, my number 6. It's a band we've talked in length about in other videos and stuff, so I'll try and keep this a little bit briefer. But it's Ithaca with They Fear Us, out July 29th via Hassel Records. Look, this is just 9 tracks, 9 slices of heaven, 9 wonderful examples of modern metal and hardcore. It had a ton of push behind it for all the right reasons, because Ithaca on another level here, not just intensity, but the amount of heart and soul and what they're actually doing here. This album is so good, I think, that it lifts up the metal scene itself. It's not just about lifting Ithaca up, not just a refinement of their sound and an improvement over their debut record. It's not just about being furious and ferocious or heartfelt and melodic. It is so all of those things that it's so good and are so strong at it and are so developed at it that their talent and what they stand for and what they're capable of based off this album lifts the metal scene. You look and point at this band and go, there's a band to be proud of. And this is the kind of music they're putting out. Ithaca, They Fear Us, number 6.
Okay, number 5. So quickly, as I said, at number 6, that was like the last black metal one and the last awkward pronunciation one, and then realized number 5 was as well. So this is Heimatspuk by Mosaic. Released on the 22nd of April via Eisenwald. It's a one-man project as such, German, specifically Thuringian, which I believe to be a regional sort of place, like, so I don't know, saying you're a Yorkshireman or something like that.
Yeah, we did a reaction to this. I remember this conversation.
We picked one song out on this. This is the second release for Mosaic. Apparently a person who has black metal roots, but the debut album was a bit more avant-garde, and then he wanted to return to that black metal roots for this follow-up album. The person, or as a band, like, what is one person in the band, so the person or a band, he's also a Thuringian folklorist, so like, I guess again, regional folklore. And this album is combining black metal with atmospherics, mystical soundscapes, and using traditional primal folk elements native to his region, including stories and instruments and the like. So, you know, we're talking poetry, traditional stuff like that, you know, which is pretty cool. And I don't know anything about the region or anything like that. I know more now than I did before listening to the album, of course, but that's about all it really was. He's clearly, like you always are, like all these guys are, he's obviously a very talented person. I think this album is just fucking immense. It's dark and heavy, but it's also quite gorgeous at times as well. It's very raw, but I think in a brilliant way. It's like designed to be raw because of that folklore sort of element of almost being primal.
Yeah.
And it would have been wrong to be too produced, actually. It would have broken that, like in a way. So it makes it more believable and more like easier to buy into. Just very, very impactful on me. It's an album I really, really enjoyed. Blend of folk and traditional instruments with that raw or black metal sound. It's a sound I love anyway. You know, like it's something I like a lot. And I think this is an album that balances it perfectly.
Well described. Well described. If you didn't know them before, I think you've sold it to most people. Okay, my number 5 comes from a solo artist too. A solo artist who goes under the name of Rise to the Sky. Every time to date, this artist has put an album or an EP out, it has ended up in my top lists. In fact, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but he had 2 albums out in 1 year and both ended up in the top lists. Sergio Gonzalez, Catalan, can do no fucking wrong. And once again, with his new album, Every Day a Funeral, out May 6, 2022 by Mamoo's Music Records, he blew my mind. He is one of the most talented solo musicians I've ever seen. And once again, it's album music that aches with emotional value, an album that is irresistibly beautiful, but unashamedly dark and heavy. We're talking about a combination of atmospheric grandeur and mind-crushing death-infused doom. It just creates this towering monstrosity, this monolith of melancholy that simply hypnotizes from beginning to end. Number 5, this dude, man, needs to stop releasing such great music.
High praise, man.
Yeah, I love him.
Scott leads nicely into my next one in terms of bands that every time they release something, it finds itself into my top list. And I can actually pronounce this one, which is like, yay. And this is Zealandardo's self-titled album, Zealandardo, my favorite album of the year. Come out 11th of February by MVKA, I believe. Sometimes hard to work out some of who the releasing record labels are on these, because they're obviously distributed then by multiple other labels, and it's like one of these ones is the one.
Yes.
I'll go with that one. It's the shortest. That said, you know, like I got a lot of love for Leonardo, of course. That's not a surprise. The whole website have championed them for many, many years, and they seem to get better and better with each release. It's a simple fact. It's the 3rd album from them now, and it's the strongest. And I wouldn't be surprised if the 4th was stronger still, and the 5th stronger than that. You know, we've got a lot of confidence in these guys. Better not let me down. I think one of the things I like about this album a lot is that, like, while it does still have elements of the past, it does also show a very, very clear evolution. And I think that's going to be important for them to take that step up.
Yeah.
Like it, you know, to maybe have, it's not mainstream, but wider appeal, you know.
Agreed.
And I think this album has that. I think there are songs in this that like aren't as maybe as abrasive as some of the songs, maybe like more visceral on the older albums. It's also like sounds like a complaint, because there is still some of it. It's not quite as the sort of synth stuff and all that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not quite so. It's there on a couple of tracks, like interludes and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? But not to the point of say like the first release where it was like every other track was one of them. Sacrilegium, wasn't it?
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3. I think, like, you know, it's got, you know, off the top of my head, probably like 5 or 6 songs that I think are personal favorites of mine. Absolutely brilliant songs, you know. And what they seem to be doing at the moment, which I think is just going to set them up really, really well for like the future, is creating this back catalogue of big hits.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, at the moment, there are 3 albums, literally. I mean, there's been a few singles around that, and they even dropped a new fucking EP like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, while they're on tour still. So, oh yeah, and here's some more stuff. So I think they're intelligent. as in keeping that buzz going. And I like to see that. I like to see a band that kind of seem to have like a plan. Like, do you know what I mean? I think that's really cool. But also, like, they've got 3 albums out, and already at shows they're having to drop some of my favorites. Yeah, like it's still packed out with like favorites. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the idea we saw them like not too long ago, and Come On Down didn't make it to the set list, and it was still a phenomenal set list. It's like it's quite, I think, quite a thing to be 3 albums in and be able to drop a song like Come On Down.
Yeah.
You know, then that to me is like shows progression over there. But anyway, look, sorry, I'm actually lyrical about these guys.
Yeah, you just went off them about Zealandardo there.
Yeah, I like Zealandardo, and I like the new album.
Okay, my 4th one. Reiterating a point that's been made a couple of times, but about when you see a band that you've listened to for quite a few years and you know they've got a new release out and you've total confidence in that band, you get very excited. This was the case with this album that was released on November 4th, 2022 by Non-Serbian Records. It is Mr. Misery's Severance. All the way up at number 4 for me, because good God, do I love this band. So going in this album, I had high expectations. I already knew they exude melancholy and drama in unparalleled black metal ways. You expect dark despair. You expect blackened emotion and heavy horror. But I always expect to be wowed. So like you'd think like, man, that's going to go wrong one day. They're going to put something out that's just okay. And you'll be like, oh yeah, it's just all right. Nope, not at all. This is their best work to date. In fact, Severance is just could have easily been number 1. Like this is also interchangeable at the end. It's a gargantuan tome of dark melodies, savage black heaviness, and intricate detail, where a wealth of instrumental and vocal talents work in twisted harmony, making its lengthy runtime, because it is a long album, disappear so fucking quickly. There's no getting distracted or bored of this album because every track has bucket loads of imaginative moments. It's gripping savagery, sumptuous atmosphere, and heart-wrenching melodic grandiosity. It is one of those that I describe as exhausting. It's exhausting to listen to, but you just can't put it down because they control every twist and turn, dragging the listener through the tundra of desolation. You listen to it. I always use writing these words. I end up coming up with constant ways to describe wintry weather because it's such a wintry theme look and feel of this band. It is mentally draining, but it's one that you have to experience. I think everyone should give this album a go, even if you're anti-black metal or atmospheric black metal and all of that. Give it a go at least once and just see if you like it, because I think you might. So that's my 4th favorite album of the year.
Yep, I said my 20th, but you know, it's one of those things, man. Do the same list in 6-7 weeks' time. I've got a feeling it might be closer to your positioning. So my 3rd favorite album of the year, which was a surprise for me at the time. When I listened to this, I would never have thought going into this it would end up so high on my list, but it did. And it's Goreskin Coffin's Release My Suffering, delivered by Funeral Goat Records. Even sounds blackened enough. Funeral Goat. Back on the 14th of January. It's managed to last the whole year.
Incredible.
Yeah, it is. Like, it's an amazing thing. Like, because you know, like I'm aware, we're all aware that sometimes you listen to an album and in the 2 weeks that kind of follow that, it can be like your mind is blown when you listen and it stays blown for a week or so, and then other things start coming out and you kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
But I just haven't with this album. It's stuck with me. I think it's phenomenal. You know, Californian-based band, black and death metal. Set a very high bar very early on. It's got, I mean, it is black and death metal, you know, so it is what you expect it to be. It does have a little touches into other genres. It's quite, I find it to be quite creative and intelligent within that circle, without it being like, you know, there's no jazz pianist coming in or anything like that. This is still very much what you get. It's fucking heavy, gets the adrenaline flowing, and maybe helped by the fact that I went in there with expectations of like it being something different.
Yep.
Then when I heard it and I was like, what the fuck, this is amazing. But I think, you know, if an album comes out in like, well, pretty much 12 months ago and 12 months later I'm still, you know, spinning it regularly, and all songs on it, you know, I have favorites, but like there isn't a bad song on this album, then, you know, I think that's a very, very good thing. It's a very high mark of respect.
Absolutely. And so like for your knowledge, people watching and listening, we keep track of our album reviews with our handy Google Docs document, and that's how we keep track of our scoring / reviews. But even still, that's just a list of what we've done and a score. You look at it and go, oh yeah, and it's done basically in order. So if you go to the very top of one particular score, that would likely be the first one or one of the early ones of the year. But that doesn't mean anything because that's just a list. So it's not, you can use it as a reference point, but it isn't going to help you. Because I looked at that list and I went, okay, there's our 10 out of 10s. And there was a couple where I was like, shit, I haven't really listened to that much since it first came out. So that was kind of a thing where they kind of got eliminated because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 3. My third favorite album of the year comes from the Barnum Reserve. It is Designs, released September 30th, 2022 via 3/4D Records. I laugh because I feel like I've talked a lot about this band recently. And this is it. This is just a band that goes, right, we're post-rock, but we're not actually going to be post-rock at all. Whatever you think post-rock is, forget it, because the Barnum Reserve are a unique band indeed. One that I think blurs the lines between music and sort of cinema, because I think it's cinematically impressive as much as anything else, but it is boundary pushing as fuck, man. It's so impressive in that, because its base is planted in post-rock. I will admit to that. But by blending in a whole host of modern music technologies, it is very unique in that regard. It is a fascinating, ultimately really listenable and challenging record, but it motivates you to want to keep going and try another track again because you missed something. You know, you want to pick up another details and then finding and uncovering more. The more I listened to it, the more I was like, I don't think I've got a negative thing to say about this. After initially writing like notes and stuff and being like, oh, I'm not too sure about that. The more I went back and went, no, this really fucking is good. So I realized after a point, and then I realized I've listened to it probably more times than I do normally when it comes to writing a review. I probably gave this one more listens because I was so fascinated by it. I wanted to make sure that I was giving it its fair dues, and it got it. It got 10 out of 10, and here the third best album of the year.
So top 2 then.
This is going to be interesting.
So number 2, Pain Remains, Lorna Shore. A lot of speak about these guys already, so I'll keep it brief.
Yeah.
Did not see this coming. It's pretty much it. Somebody said to me, oh, Lorna Shore are going to release a new album, and it's going to be not just your second favorite, but one that could easily have been my favorite. I would have scoffed at them, I imagine. Look, they're a big name, like, we're big enough. Like I knew who Lorna Shore were, knew them well, know stuff by them, like stuff by them, and that was about as far as it went until Pain Remains came out, which to me is a game changer in terms of my feelings towards that band. Like the admiration and respect I have for that band now are like, it's phenomenal, really. Yeah. Like the change that this album has kind of had with me. I just was blown away by it, and it is like, a large part of the blown away is the Pain Remains trilogy, but it is worth pointing out, like you did in your review, that and in what some of the previous talks we've done on single songs for the year, and that is that even outside of the Pain Remains trilogy, it's a fucking strong album. Yeah, there are other brilliant songs on that, but it is well worthy of being even number 1 on my list if it wasn't for one other album. But yeah, Lorna Shore have absolutely blown me away this year.
Okay, right, number 2. So my number 2 and number 1, the light between them is minuscule. It is so fucking small that even up to now, I have them the other way around, but I've decided to change it around based off one thing. But I'm going to explain what that thing is when I get to number 1, why I want this band to be the top album of the year. So my number 2 is also Lorna Shore's Pain Remains, October 14th by Central Media. I echo pretty much everything you've said there. It's the same again. What the fuck? Where did this come from? What was this? It's the biggest and grandest and most intense release they have definitely put out. It's a staggering achievement, a spectacular album that's over about an hour's worth of music, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Captivating qualities from beginning to end. This is a band grabbing the moment, grabbing the brass ring, as it were, to use a wrestling analogy. From beginning to end, it's simply brilliant. I think they should be immensely proud of what they've achieved. I can see it being number one in a lot of lists, but certainly in the top 10 for most people's lists, unless they're being contrarian, to be fair, because I think it'd be a bit of a dick to just outright go, because I've heard people say, oh, dumb shit. Like, you're just being an idiot. You don't have to like it, but don't be an idiot, you know?
Yeah.
But it is my second favorite album of the year. It has been number one for a long, long time, but there's a reason why I switched it to number two. But before that, that's, yeah, you're number one. I think I know it.
I think I know you're number one too, but
Yeah, well, I haven't said it, have I? So it's one very important album on my list is missing.
yeah. Okay, so my number one, which you probably do have, is Portal to the Goddamn Blood Dimensions, Rotten Fruit, Regular Orchard, released by 4,000 labels. Well, no funeral.
Everybody wanted it. That's what this is. Everyone wanted it.
We all want a piece of this now, don't we?
Yeah. Slice of the apple.
You know, yeah. I've spoken quite a bit. You know, it came out in March. I've spoken about the album, the songs in it. We've listened, reacted to one of them. So, you know, it's no secret that this album is impactful on me. Sometimes weird to talk about it as an album because it's 2 tracks, but then it's like 30 minutes of music. Everything we've said, like, it's still what it was before. I feel like this is something that transcends music, like as I know it anyway. You know, I feel like, you know, like a lot of the time we listen to stuff and we're like, oh, you know, it's quite unique. It's quite unique. But I guess in a way, like, this almost like broke music for me because like now I see this as unique and I'm like, all right, come on, people, do that shit then.
Do that shit.
You know, you want to be unique. But like I find it to be mesmerizing, emotional, you know, pulls you all over the place in different directions. It is like you've said, and I agree. Feels more like a movement or a piece or something rather than a songs per se. Sort of stuff that, you know, I feel like will, for me, be listenable forever. I just, you know, in the same way that people will still listen to Beethoven and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I listen to this shit and I think this is masterfully crafted pieces of art, like more so than songs. And, you know, there's been so many good albums that this year. There's albums that didn't make my list that are phenomenal albums, but nothing has been as impactful on me as this album. You know, Lorna Shore's album at number 2, I could argue many reasons why that's a better overall album than this, but I had to go on the impact, and the impact this album's had on me has been nothing short of phenomenal, to be honest.
How well put was that, people? I mean, you're never going to hear a better descriptive reason as to why an album is number one. And if that hasn't sold it to you, man, I don't know what you need. Just go check it out. Okay, so let me explain myself here. Basically, it's this. If Lorna Shore had put out an all right album, if it had been Pain Remains had been an all right album, wouldn't have bothered me. Wouldn't have cared, to be honest. I'd have been like, yeah, fine. All right, it's a good album. End of. No worries. Wouldn't have bothered me. However, if the band that's number one had put out an all right album, it would have bothered me a lot. It would have hurt my feelings. I'd have been, oh, shit. I'd have been disappointed. I'd have been let down. I'd been like, ah, oh, fuck it. And thankfully they didn't. And that's why they had to be number one in the end. It's Conjurer with Pathos. Nuclear Blast, July 1st, 2022. Yeah? You knew that?
Like you said, like it wasn't in your list to now. Yeah. And I know that you love that album, so...
Yeah, it's simply that. That's the light between the two, which is I wouldn't have cared if Lorna Shore had put out a bad album. I'd have cared so fucking much if Conjurer had put out a bad one. So that means, while the light between are what I think is both incredibly impactful, great albums, Conjurer takes first place. Because they've done the impossible. And I said it in my review, and I'm going to repeat it here. And I know you're not too sure about this when you said it. But for me, this is a better album than Maya. It is a stellar release because Conjurer are so good at what they do, but because this album also features extensive and extravagant amount of creativity. It's not about being proud of what they've achieved here. It's one of those that gets better and better the more you listen to it and the more you pick it apart. I believe this is the album, this is Conjurer's game-changing album, that in years to come, way further down the line, when they're headlining festivals and arenas and so on, that people look back and go, it was Pathos was the moment where the train just picked up such speed that you kind of were hanging on for dear life. It's thrilling from beginning to end. It's so them still, but shows expansion. I mean, there's some clean singing on this album, people. Shock, horror, and so on. But it is incredibly heavy. It is a really, really immense piece of work that I just, a lot of it, you know, I love this band. I have a lot of feeling for this band. But it's the fact that they, so far to date, continue to put out music that continually blows me away. And this did the exact same job. I still listen to many of the tracks now. So yeah, number 1, Conjurer's Pathos. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
great lists again. You know, lots of unique bands again.
do you know why Portrait Blood Goddamn Dimension Band didn't make my top 20? You know why?
No.
Because I haven't listened to the other track.
Oh, really?
Yeah. While you were
So
speaking there, I was wondering why I didn't consider it. And I was like, wait a minute, it's 2 tracks and you've still only listened to Ashes. And I think the reason why I didn't listen to it, right? And I think I've got a good defense. I think I didn't listen to it because I figured, and I'm pretty sure we might have even mentioned it, that we would eventually do the other track as reaction. And I think I may have thought, leave it so that you'll get authentic reaction, you know, rather than being like, oh yeah, I've listened to the song already.
do you know what's quite interesting with that? Is that, do you remember when we did the reaction to Ashes? And I said to you, I actually think that you will prefer Want over Ashes, but Want is longer, so I went with Ashes. Which is quite like a, you know, if I'm right, an exciting prospect, right? Because you very much enjoy Ashes, and if I'm right, and I think you prefer Want to Ashes, well, how exciting will that be when we get to it?
Yeah, watch out for that video maybe in the new year. We had some doubles up there in random places around the place. Mr. Misery both got a shout on both our lists. Obviously, Lorna Shaw both came in at number 2 as well. So let's just speak volumes about that. A few others here and there. Beyond that, though, I think we've covered, the best of 2022. What about yours? What have you got to offer us? Let us know in the comments. And before we sign off, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?